Our story this week is from Georgia Krieger, PhD. And here is How I Survived an Unwanted Divorce. The process resulted in lots of zucchini. Divorce came as a surprise package in the mail. A manila envelope from Mr. Somebody Such and So, Esquire. Someone paid to break the news to me that my husband didn't want to be a husband anymore. Hubby told me a beautiful tale. "Let's pick up and move," he said. "We can start over somewhere new. I think you should look for a new position at a university somewhere, anywhere." His business in Maryland was failing, he told me, and it was time to try something else. The kids were grown and on their own. It was the perfect time to make a move and start a new life. Compliant wife that I was, I took the bait. I found a job at a college in Michigan, and we began our move. We bought an old house, a fixer-upper that would be just right for a guy who liked working with his hands, a guy with lots of tools, someone like my husband. Hubby said he needed to tie up some loose ends with his business in our hometown, and then he would join me in Michigan. I started my new job and made the best of living alone in a run-down old house that desperately needed a fix-it man. Then the news arrived in the mail. Mr. S.S. Esquire informed me that I was being divorced, and that if I agreed to my husband's terms, I was required to sign the attached forms, here, and here. Otherwise, he threatened, I would be summoned to court. I'd been tricked. The plan all along had been a version of the classic bait and switch. Promise wife a happy new life and convince her to move. Deposit wife somewhere far away. Dump her. Alone in a strange town hundreds of miles from home, I knew no one. Family and friends were all on the East Coast. I was employed by a private, faith-based college that frowned on divorce, which made me reluctant to share with anyone at work what was happening to me. I didn't want to lose my job. Wandering from room to room in what was now my house, I wondered how the disintegrating plaster ceiling in the bathroom would be repaired, and how the iffy electrical wiring throughout the house would be replaced. I contemplated the rotting back door, crumbling chimney, and decrepit carriage house out back that was leaning dangerously toward the neighbor's garage. I looked out the window at the backyard, a dry brown plot with patches of dust where there had once been grass. At the far end of the property, in an area surrounded by a chain-link fence, years and years of wild grapevines had lived, died, and accumulated until the area looked like a jungle. My life was over, I believed. I had never lived alone before. As a 19-year-old bride, I had been passed from my mother to my husband. I had always been dependent on someone. How would I survive? The year I received the package from the attorney in the mail was the year I first tried vegetable gardening. When I was little, I had childish dreams of living on a farm. I fantasized about planting things and watching them grow as the sun smiled down on me like a character in a Disney movie. Now, an adult who had learned that life is nothing like a Disney movie, I looked out at the fenced-in area at the end of my backyard and said to myself, that would make a great garden. What was I thinking? I didn't know anything about growing vegetables. What made me believe I could create a garden from a jungle and accomplish it alone? I went out in the backyard, opened the gate to the overgrown chaos that I envisioned as my future garden, and stepped in. I imagined neatly planted rows of green beans, lettuces, tomatoes, squashes, peppers. What I saw, though, was a small wilderness that seemed to warn against trespass. Its vines, weeds, and sapling trees created an obstacle that looked to me unconquerable. Wild grapevines had woven their way into the chain link of the fence. I reached into the dense tangle with both hands and pulled. As they snapped dryly, I felt their hollowness, their surrender to my insistence. With each pull, they cast a fine dust in the air. Bare-handed and single-minded, I tore at the mess of the past, the leavings of years of summers before I arrived at this place. Day after day, I worked at clearing a space for my garden until my hands were numb and my shoulders ached. Eventually, there it was, the ground, rich black dirt that seemed to promise miracles. A neighbor watched me working, and I guess he took pity on me. He gave me an old gas-powered rototiller that had been taking up space in his garage. I learned that if I sprayed starter fluid directly into the air intake valve, I could get it to start. Jockeying the tiller as if I were tussling with an alligator, I turned the earth. I planted seedlings. Then I waited. During those days of hard work, I had plenty of time to think. Memories of the past, all the events that had led me to this place, played like an old movie in my mind. My body worked robotically, hour after hour. My mind worked, too, to make sense of my circumstances. I asked myself hard questions. Had it been a happy marriage? No. What started as a happy union had disintegrated over the years into conflict and frustration. We had started as two 19-year-olds excited about the lives ahead of us. Over the years, we grew apart, pursuing our separate careers, chasing our different desires. Had I seen the end coming? No, but I should have. I just didn't want to face it. We had been married for 30 years. Don't most couples who have been married that long, no matter how unhappy they might be, elect to stay married, grit their teeth, and tough it out for the rest of their lives? That's what I would have done. Did I bear any responsibility for the failure of my marriage? Had I made serious mistakes along the way? Yes, I had. I had contributed my share to the relationship's ultimate failure. At its worst or best, marriage is a mess. It can be a good mess, two people, each with their mix of plans, desires, and visions of the future, who come together and manage to form one plan, one set of dreams. Or marriage can be a bad mess, as mine had become. Two people with contrasting needs and dreams who struggle for 30 years to make it work. Eventually, in my case, one of us gave up. In the fenced-in plot at the end of my backyard, my plantings exploded. Tomato plants bloomed, and the fruits plumped and ripened on the vine. So many green beans grew on their little bushes that for a while I had to pick a crop every day. Leaf lettuce and kale burst into rivers of vibrant green. And the zucchini seedlings I planted became monsters with dinner plate-sized leaves and gaudy golden blooms. Then, as if overnight, they appeared. Huge, green, speckly, phallus-like zucchini. Dozens of them. When it came to gardening, I didn't know what I was doing, but it surely looked as if I did. A joke circulates among gardeners every midsummer about people pulling their window shades and locking their doors when they see the neighborhood gardener coming with her baskets full of huge zucchini, hoping to unload some of them on her unsuspecting neighbors. I became that joke. Knocking on my neighbors' doors and accosting my associates at work, I smiled, holding out my zucchini. All those clumsy, bulbous, green phallic clubs. I offered them proudly to anyone who didn't run away and watched them smile back politely and stare as they wondered, I imagine, what they would do with all that zucchini. Through guesswork and luck, I learned about gardening that year. But I learned a few other things too. You can dump this girl in a strange place where she knows no one. Leave her alone to fend for herself. Let her feel lost with no one to turn to. You can deposit her in an old, high-maintenance house with no home repair tools and no fix-it skills. Show her a neglected, overgrown yard that looks to her like a jungle. Then watch her discover the storehouse of self-reliance that she never knew was inside her. Observe as she gathers her strength. See her learn to cope, grow, and thrive on her own. Notice how she turns chaos into something beautiful. Watch her survive. That, by the way, is exactly what I did. Thanks for listening. I'm Kris Keppeler, and I hope you enjoyed listening to these stories as much as I enjoyed narrating them. I'd love for more people to hear these wonderful stories, so please share and tell your friends.